I'm Logan Webb, and you're listening to TortureCast.
You're listening to a podcast by and for fans of the three-time world champion, San Francisco Giants. With hosts Chad King and Eric Nathanson. This is TortureCast.
Hey everybody, we're back. We are back sooner than we thought. We signed off episode 270 of the TortureCast a mere 6 days ago, wishing you a happy holidays, a happy new year, and we'd see you in the new year unless something important happened. Well, we thought something would be another signing, or a move, or a trade, or something like that. I don't know, moving the fences in, a new food item at Oracle Park. Now, we pretty much got the most devastating news aside from obviously people dying or the Giants being contracted, or moving to Tampa. As you all know now, if you're tuning to this podcast, you're a Giants fan. Welcome to TortureCast. It's Thursday, December 22nd. This is episode 271, which we're at today. It's been 36 hours, a little less than 36 hours, 35 hours since we found the news, heard the news. Eric and I were up for the news on, what was that, Tuesday night, late Tuesday night? Yeah, it's Thursday now, where we knew that the press conference had been postponed, and we were kind of nervous throughout the day, but not really nervous, just kind of like, all right, they're just ironing some things out. But in a shocking, utterly stunning development, we just heard, boom, Carlos Correa signs with the Mets, 12 years, $315 million. And Eric, we had a Twitter Spaces yesterday with a bunch of the guys, and it was a little bit of therapy, and I hope that everyone listening today, it's a little therapy for you as well. But I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned to the point of, of course, losing a person is much, much worse. I'm just trying to think of the emotional response of that first denial of, like, you keep scrolling through Twitter going, is this a Heyman thing? Is this like Aaron Judge is signing with the Giants? Is this April Fool's?
Slusser confirmed it, and it was over.
And it was over. And I just sat there, and you had texted me and Willie, and I couldn't sleep, man. I know that's stupid. People laugh at me for staying up because of a player who left the team that never even played for him and hadn't even signed with them technically. But I was just left stunned thinking about what the hell are the Giants going to do, and we need an explanation. And before we get into the timeline, I think we need to do that first to kind of establish a baseline so everyone's on the same page. But I don't know, Eric, emotionally, physiologically, spiritually, besides wanting to throw your phone, how did you respond to this?
I, like you, I'm with you. It sounds weird. I'm 40-something years old, and the fact that my team suddenly didn't sign a player kept me up at night, and it's not. The Carlos Correa is like the symptom here. He's like the thing. He's the tool in a sense of what the greater thing that is going on is, and we don't know what the hell it is because they backed out on Carlos Correa all of a sudden. So there's a bigger problem. So it made worrisome more than anything like that. I with you, I was stunned. I pulled out my phone. I'd been sick, and I finally went out last night for the first time in forever. And I didn't look at my phone, or not last night, Tuesday night. And I didn't look at my phone. And then finally I pulled it out of my pocket, and I'm getting message after message after message. Like, holy shit, you better not be asleep. Wake up. You got to see what's going on. And I opened it up to see the Heyman, and then Slusser confirmed it. And I was stunned. I'm still stunned. I'm flabbergasted. Flabbergasted is the word. I was so flabbergasted I had to write. Quick, shout out to the Side Hustle Giants chatter. I had to write something. I wrote a column over there, like 650 word long, just with the same questions that we're going to get into today. Like, what the happened? How the fuck did this happen? I think that's what drove us both to just be so frustrated. How did this happen? How did this happen? And like you said, we're going to get into the timeline and kind of look to see how everything unfolded. And there's not a single step of the way where the Giants look good in this. That's what just really frustrates me about it. And anger is definitely, I think, the rawest emotion. I'm angry at my baseball team in a way I've never been angry at them before. And I have no idea what the future holds. And as we'll see, the Giants don't want to give us any indication of that either.
It's funny. We were talking a little pre-show, and I've seen this online too. A lot of Giants fans haven't felt like this since Game 6 of the 2002 World Series. However, that, of course, was a game-time decision, a managerial decision, a result that ended up, killing them in Game 7. It was devastating in the sense of we were right there. They were very close. They were, 5 outs away from winning the World Series.
Yep.
And it didn't happen. And we all criticized Dusty for giving, Russ Ortiz the ball. But you know what? It still could have happened. We really don't know. That we're just making assumptions. This is different. This is an organizational flub. This is a catastrophic decision by the Giants. And to be clear, it's not about the player himself. It's not. Because whether you wanted Correa or you thought it was an albatross of a contract and you're relieved that the Giants did not sign him, that's fine. And that's your opinion. And I'm not going to argue that because there's some merit to that. It's the way in which this unfolded. It's the repercussions and the ripple effect that this will have for months and years to come. And it is one of the worst moments right now, and I know we're only 36 hours away from this happening, in franchise history. And I'm not being hyperbolic about it. Andrew Baggarly in his column said it was one of the worst days in franchise. Same with Alex Pavlovic. These guys are calm, rational journalists, and they're characterizing it as such too. So I'm not flying off the handle saying this, and I do believe you and I are fairly rational, grounded, mature, reasonable Giants fans. We typically don't fly off the handle. We typically don't buy into conspiracy theories. We talk to other Giants fans who are just rabid, and we're like, dude, calm down. It's, when we're talking about, why did he put Doval back in? Why did he not put this guy in the lineup? I mean, just ridiculous stuff like that. We're just calm about it. We're like, it didn't work out. This is different. And most of the fans that I know, and the friends and colleagues and other podcasters and journalists I know, they're furious. They're furious about this. Marty Lurie's furious.
Such a reaction.
Our hosts are furious. Yeah. According to Baggarly and Pavlovic, many of the front office staff, employees, and the players are furious. Pavs has been texting with players, which of course he's going to leave them anonymous, and they are absolutely frustrated, angry, and furious about this. And this
I've never seen an entire cascade like this of a reaction from everybody across the board just being the same thing.
I mean, I can't put a number on it, but if I would say 90% of Giants fans are furious about this decision. Yes, you see your few on social media going, I think this is, oh man, the Giants dodged a bullet here. And it's like, fine. Again, that's about the player and your expectations. That's not what this discussion is about. That's not, if they missed out on Carlos Correa, they were beat out like with an Aaron Judge or whatever, I wouldn't be furious. I'd be frustrated. Nope. I'd just be frustrated. But ultimately, it would have been the player's decision, just like it was Judge's decision. This is a monumental flub by the front office, and this is why we are furious about it. So let's get quickly into the timeline. On December 13th, the Giants and Carlos Correa agree, in principle, to a 13-year, $350 million contract. And obviously, Giants Twitterverse, social mediaverse blows up. We're all just like, oh my God, they finally got someone. They're on paper better than they are last year. We're talking about on our last podcast, they won 81 games last year. If they can improve by 6-7 games, they're where the Phillies were last year. They get into the playoffs and maybe they can make a run. It's like this is the momentum they need, to get that wild card spot. Everything's hunky-dory. We sign off. See you in 2023. 2 days ago, December 20th, the Giants have scheduled a press conference. And by the way, I get all these press emails as well, so I've seen these come across. And in fact, I can look right now. Here it is. It came out December 19th. This was for immediate release. Tuesday, December 20th, 11 a.m. Pacific. They were going to hold a press conference on the club level, third base side, Oracle Park, San Francisco. What? Giants executives to hold press availability. Blah, blah, blah.
Never mentioning Correa's name, though. It was vague.
No, it was vague.
That's something that I've noticed. It was a very vague announcement.
It was very vague. And of course, they give all the details here, where to pick up your credentials, whatever. This was sent on Monday, December 19th, 8:35 a.m. So roughly 26, 27 hours before the press conference. So as we know now, that was scheduled. Everybody was like, ooh, I wonder what this is about. We all knew. We were just being facetious. Carlos Correa flies in, has his physical on December 19th. He stays in a hotel, Union Square Hotel. Same with Scott Boras. They stay on the same floor, just a couple of doors down. And on the morning of December 20th, he's getting ready. He's actually dressed and ready to go because he had an interview scheduled with KMBR at 9:30 a.m., an hour and a half prior to the press conference. I was listening to KMBR that morning. They were promoting the hell out of it. Oh my God, Carlos Correa, the newest Giant's going to be on at 9:30. And they also had a schedule of a list of Giants players, executives, former players, other people to interview after the press conference to talk about it. Alex Pavlovic had a 1:20 p.m. one-on-one interview scheduled with him. Like the whole day was scheduled. Then at about 8:30 a.m., and I received this email too. By the way, the other emails all come with this official Giants header and this formatting. It's all very precise and everything like that. At 8:30 a.m., press receives an email, no header, no nothing. It is literally like someone typed it into an empty email body and sent it. It is crazy. Yeah, in fact.
Wow.
Here, I'll show you.
That's interesting.
I'll bring this up for those.
It was definitely hastily put together.
It was very much so. In fact, I'm going to share my screen here for the ones who do see this. All right, let's share this.
Yeah, I saw both statements go by. Bags points out in his article between this statement and the statement, the other statement that comes out.
Okay, so here is the press release from December 19th talking about holding the press conference on Tuesday, December 20th. Yeah, you have your news release, banner graphic, everything centered and right justified and left justified. It's very official. Now I will show you the email that came. There it is.
Wow.
Today's Giants press conference has been postponed. Nothing.
Wow.
No header, no signature, nothing. Just that. Just like if you typed it on your phone. So that was kind of telling right there. It was like, something emergency like is happening. So everybody started speculating what's going on. Then we heard rumors it was something about his physical, whatever. So since then, we didn't really hear anything all day. But in retrospect now, after this all went down, according to Scott Boras' interviews, and here's the thing, we'll get into this too, the Giants have not gotten in front of this. And they still haven't gotten in front of this, Eric. They have done nothing except release one statement, which we'll get to. But according to Scott Boras, which the Giants haven't even contested this information, the Giants contacted him that morning saying that they had some issues, some red flags about the physical. They needed more time to kind of digest everything, perhaps even renegotiate, whatever. Scott Boras said, okay, we'll grant you that time. You got till 1 or 1:30. It was sometime in the early afternoon. So they only had a few hours, maybe 5-6 hours to respond, but at least he let him know. And he said, because I have other suitors that are interested, so please, get back to us. Well, the Giants also knew that the Mets were interested. They tried to swoop in late after the verbal agreement was made. And so Boras actually had to tell Steve Cohen, hey, yo, bro, sorry, but we already got an agreement with the Giants. And he's like, damn, I'm too late. Okay, we'll sit in the sidelines. Maybe something will happen. The Giants didn't call Boras back. They didn't call him back. They didn't call him back all day. They didn't call him back at night. They haven't called him back as of now.
Still,
they never
they probably still haven't
contacted him, ever. And this is where it starts getting really bad. They essentially ghosted Boras. And that is just a punk move. It is unprofessional at minimal, right?
The biggest agent in the game.
It is despicable at minimum and unprofessional at minimum. So, of course, Boras went straight to Steve Cohen, who was on vacation in Hawaii, and asked him if he would like a third baseman with his 3 olives and his martini. And so Steve Cohen said, yep, let's make this happen. So from his Union Square hotel room, Scott Boras banged out a new deal with Cohen and Mets executives, and shortly before midnight, we heard the news, which we just talked about at the beginning of the show, the top of the show. I think about that. This dude is so rich. He's the richest owner in baseball. He owns 100% of the Mets, right? He's a billionaire. He's been throwing money the entire offseason. They already had, by far, the most money committed in total contracts this offseason, and the highest payroll prior to this. And Cohen's like, yeah, let's make it happen. And within hours, they banged out a deal, 12 years, $315 million. And obviously, Giants social media was just we knew also most of the fans were in bed. That was the crazy thing. I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I had like 2-3 hours of sleep because I had to get to work early in the morning. And to listen to KMBR and to see social media blow up from people just waking up, it was almost in a macabre way entertaining, kind of like rubbernecking in a bad accident on the highway. It was like, ooh, let's hear all these raw reactions from Giants fans who have just finding out. There's something about that I actually kind of enjoyed. But so everyone just blew up all day and we're like, where's an explanation from the Giants? Where's an explanation from the Giants? And finally, at some time in the early afternoon, the Giants released an official statement from Farhan Zaidi himself. And this is it in 33 words. This is the only thing we've heard from the Giants thus far. Quote, while we are prohibited from disclosing confidential medical information, as Scott Boras stated publicly, so they kind of agreed with his statement there was a difference of opinion over the results of Carlos's physical examination. We wish Carlos the best, end quote. What? What?
Yep. That's it.
We wish Carlos the best?
Yep. Nothing to the fans, not a word.
Nothing. And look, yes, they can't disclose the physical issue because of HIPAA law. I get that. There is a lot you can explain to the fans. There's a lot you can explain to the fans.
You can apologize. You can say to our fans who thought Carlos was on board with us, we apologize. You know what I mean? Something like that. We'll try to do better in the future. Just acknowledge it in some way, shape, or form to the fans, just to be like, even an oops, my bad. It's better than what we've got. And we haven't gotten anything. Just speak to the fans some way, shape, or form. When are we going to get the press conference with the accountability? Will we ever get the press conference with the accountability?
Well, there's going to be a lot of questions about accountability in the weeks and months to come, and they're not going to be able to dodge and avoid the questions forever. It's going to have to come out, even if it's not in a formal setting. It has to come out. You have these guys. You have Larry Baer, Farhan Zaidi, Charles Johnson, or Greg Johnson, as kind of the figureheads and the spokesmen for the team. And they're doing interviews all the time during spring training and the regular season. They're going to have Fan Fest in February. They're going to have the media availability. So even if they can kick the can down the road to the new year, they're going to have to face the music at some point. And it's hard for me to understand this organization that has been run so well and so professional for so many years completely crapped the bed this time. And they still are crapping the bed. That's the problem. They're still crapping the bed as we speak. And I don't understand it. They clearly had to know prior to this decision how this was going to blow up. They had to have, because any one of us would have known how this would have happened. So of course the front office knew that this is the reaction that was going to happen. You'd think they'd have a strategy in place, some sort of PR control, damage control, something out there, even spin doctors, whatever. There's been nothing except that 33-word statement. And what's crazy about it is it certainly allows fans and media members to start their conjecture and to start spinning out of control with conspiracy theories and to rely on statements and evidence only from one party, one side of the equation, which was Scott.
Boras is the only one talking, right? Yeah. Exactly. Them and then whatever reporters uncover from talking to various players and sources and whatnot. That's it. That's where all our information is coming from. The Giants aren't giving us any information. Finding out that it's an ankle injury from 8 years ago. Like what kind of? I'm sorry. I call bullshit. I have a hard time believing that somebody has a concern about that. That at the age of 20. He wasn't healing in a very strong way because Correa had to have been he's like a brick shithouse. I'm sure he healed well back then. The Astros had no problems with his injury history. The Twins offered him a 10-year, $280 million contract. They don't do that if they don't feel like he's healthy enough to fulfill that contract. The Mets had no problem swooping in with the 12-year offer. So, it's got to be BS some way, shape, or form. There's no way that they could be counting on the fact that he kind of broke the lower part of his leg 8 years ago as a reason to give this a hiccup. And it's just, it shows that maybe, this is the conspiracy theory start because we don't know. because they are not telling us. We don't know if ownership got cold feet. We don't know if Farhan and Carlos suddenly had a fist fight behind the curtain before they came out and it was over at that point. We don't know. I mean, it could be any of these things. Correa's jersey was there. His number one Giants home cream was there. There is a Correa Giants jersey out there. Imagine how valuable that is now.
Yeah, there's some people from social media who are like, I'm going to hunt that down and find it. We got to get that jersey.
I mean, that's got to be so much. But nobody else cared about this injury history. No other teams, the Mets, the Twins, and any other team that Boras might have negotiated with don't seem to give a shit. I mean, I'll bet you he passes the Mets physical in the next 2 days.
Boras basically confirmed the rumor. He didn't specify the ankle. He just said the Giants were concerned about a pre-MLB injury, right?
Right.
And that the ankle is a pre-MLB injury. He suffered in the minor leagues. He broke his lower leg fibula. It was surgically repaired, whatever. Okay. Boras also said, which we all see and we all know that the Giants know, he's played 8 major league seasons, and none of his injury history has been related to that leg or ankle. So I don't buy it, Eric. If this is all true, if it truly was this ankle injury, and by the way, just to be clear, the doctors cleared him. The doctors said he was physically fit. It was the Giants who looked at the physical/medical history and said, I don't know about this. And that's what's concerning about this, because if the doctors medically cleared him, the Giants, who are not doctors, found something, at least that's their story, that gave them pause. And I don't know if, let's take the route, because we have conspiracy theories, let's take the route that they're being genuine, that they really were concerned about the ankle injury. Well, what could have come up in a physical, right? Maybe an MRI showed degeneration of the bones, right? This is spitballing here. This is totally spitballing. Maybe they found some ossification, some bone spurs, something that isn't going to affect him now, but medically could affect him in 5, 6, 7 years and debilitate him. And yes, players accumulate injuries over their years, catchers, pitchers, arms, right? Bone spurs, sprains, whatever. They accumulate. They snowball, and they affect you down the road, even if you can perform with that injury right now. So, okay, maybe that's what they're concerned about, but the reality is he's performing fine now. That would be kind of a very tenuous reason, because of what you just pointed out. The Twins have had access to his entire body for the last year, and they're willing to throw 10 years at him. The Mets, who also had access to his medical information, by the way, the whole process, the way this works, if you didn't know, listeners, is once a team is interested in a free agent, they contact the agent of that player, and they say, hey, we're interested in your client. Can you send over all the medicals? They give them a password for that player's account. They log into a system, and they can download and view all of the medical history for that player. And the reason they do that is because you cannot get access to give the player a physical because they're in another city, another town. They're not going to fly to 20 different cities to do 20 different physicals. So you look at all the medical history so you understand, okay, we think this guy has a good baseline, Then you contact the agent and say, hey, we want to move forward with negotiations. We are interested in your client. Blah, blah, blah. You get a verbal agreement with whoever is the best offer and how it fits. Then you do the physical, and you use the medicals as a baseline. So this is all being explained by several GMs that I listen to, Ned Colletti and others, and this is just the way it works. So they had access to this information about his ankle injury. So if they said something came up with the physical, that's why I'm, again, playing the card on the Giants side, that maybe they found some degeneration issue or some bone spurs or something about the ankle.
That's all they could have found.
That's all that I presume, and what I've read, that they could have found at worst, right? But he was medically cleared to play. He's medically cleared, solid, fit, no problems. And the fact that he had 8 years without any issues with his ankle, it does point to the real possibility that someone in the Giants ownership group got cold feet. And there was probably an internal disagreement, let alone arguments. And ultimately, Farhan and his team have to do what the owners say. And if the majority of the owners voted to renege on the deal, Farhan has to do it. So all the people coming out saying blame Farhan, fire Farhan for this particular incident, it's not. I find almost 0% chance this is Farhan's fault. Farhan's not the one looking at the medicals going, hey guys, hey owners, I think his ankle might have a problem in 5 years. I don't think it's a good idea. That's not Farhan doing that. I'm sorry. It's not.
He's trying to sign the player. Plus, Pete Patilla, you think, would have thrown something. I mean, the guy was with Houston for like 7 years of Carlos Correa's career. So he was there when the player was there. He would have known something, which, it almost adds to another conspiracy. Is if they did back out, Patilla was the one who came up with the idea to say, oh, well, then say it was this ankle thing, because I remember this being a big deal or something like that. I'll give a little credit to Brooks for giving me that one, because I didn't think about that. Putila could have planted the seed of what they used as the excuse instead of being the guy to stop them from making a mistake. And I agree. You can't blame Farhan. It does come down to ownership when the final decision is made, but that doesn't mean Farhan's job is safe.
No,
that doesn't mean that Farhan may not get fired over something like this. And it could just not even be his own fault. He might walk away himself. I'd ask you, Chad, do you want to run a baseball team with these kind of circumstances? Look at what's happened. Look at over the years how you have been hamstrung by, ownership wants to do one thing, but it seems like they want to do it, but they're never willing to jump off the cliff. The Kevin Gosman tweet from yesterday just totally nailed it. They're so risk averse. Yeah, it was. It was so brilliant. And Webb responding to it. I mean, that's the kicker. I'm already counting down the days till Webb gets out of town now. This might have been that moment that drove Logan Webb out of town, that made him say, I don't want to be the face of this franchise. But you're right. Farhan's not the one to blame. He's probably executing somebody's orders when it comes to that. And cold feet is just, I think it's what we all keep coming back to. It's what it sounds like you're thinking. It's what I'm thinking. Someone in the organization, high ownership group, had cold feet, because Baggs' article pointed out that there were minority owners in the dark. Yes. And I have to wonder if his statement of there were minority owners in the dark is legitimately, I texted Buster Posey and he told me he didn't know what was going on.
I was floored by that. They were minority owners that literally found out the news after it happened. These are people who own part of the Giants that didn't even know about it. And he was stating in his article that all these minority owners that he spoke to were super on board, super excited and jazzed. So they definitely were not part of any grander decision, which again points to the majority owners. And I don't know how that board works, because, say, for example, Charles Johnson owns 27% of the Giants. So he doesn't have the voting power himself. So I'd presume that that the board would have to get at least 50% of the ownership to say no.
Right.
And so to me,
whoever has that control.
Yeah. So that to me means multiple majority owners had to say no to this. And there must be a reason why, whether it's cold feet, they saw something they didn't like. They're like, you know what, crap. We got all this real estate money. I'm having a little buyer's remorse. I'm having second thoughts. We've all done that. We've all made major purchases. And then even before we open the box, we're like, God, was that the right decision? So, I mean, it is possible. They are humans, that this could have happened. Maybe someone ran financials for them and they're like, oh God, I don't know about this. He's not going to turn the ticket sales that Aaron Judge was. He's not going to sell the merch after they did analysis on market dynamics and market analysis. Maybe they looked at it purely from a financial point of view and they thought to themselves, this guy isn't going to pull in the butts in the seats that we thought that he would. And now that we've done the analysis, again, this is pure conjecture, guys. We're grasping at straws here, because until the Giants come out and say what happened, this is what we're left with. And we may never know, because the ownership uses the executives as shielding and their spokespeople in their head. And so they're the fall guys. And so if the owners are like, don't ever tell the public that we did this, then Farhan and company are in a tight position. But you pointed to that as well. This is the last year of Farhan's contract, year number 5 of the extension. And I would not be surprised if he has to be the fall guy, if he was the one arguing with the ownership and he's frustrated with ownership, that if he's not fired, he just walks. He's like, peace out.
Yeah, that's where I've been going on this too. Like, if they don't end up firing him, he might just walk out the door. This is a combination of, this is not what we expected from Farhan when he signed on. This is not what we expected from ownership group, though, and what he may necessarily have given Farhan to do and what the leash is to do things. So we don't even know what that aspect of it is. And you got to be, if you're Farhan, you got to be frustrated. Like, why am I going to these owners of this big market club and, getting money out of them is like blood from a stone. It's like a root canal every time he's got to talk to owners. And he doesn't who wants to deal with something like that if that's what's going on? Again, conjecture. We don't know if that's exactly what's going on. But if that is what's going on, I mean, I'd walk away, I think, from a situation. I'd be like, you know what? This isn't the way I wanted to build a team.
Yep.
Maybe I can go try somewhere else. I have a good enough track record. This Correa thing, I can explain it away. I can blame it on ownership. If they don't fire Farhan, I think he walks. I really do think he walks at the end of this. And then I don't know what happens to Patila, but the bottom line is the owners aren't going to fire themselves.
No.
And we can't force ownership to change. So until ownership gets somebody in here that is respected, because right now our front office, our power structure is totally not respected around the league. Until they get a new power structure in place that's respected, Giants are going to have a hard time attracting people. And it just reminds me, who I feel bad for? I feel bad for Mitch Haniger, and I feel bad for Jock Peterson, because those guys were sold a bill of goods. They were both told, we're going to build this, do that. And nothing happened. Mitch Haniger especially, he was alluding to Judge in his own press conference.
He said him like 3 or 4 times during his press conference, even unprovoked or unsolicited. So I agree. And that's why the players are so pissed. I mean, in fact, the Kevin Gosman tweet, which, by the way, you got to look it up. I don't have it up right now, but he referred to basically there's a balance with dipping Oreos. There's a little too little and there's too much where it falls apart. You got to find the balance. And it was completely directed at the Giants and how they handled the situation. And of course, Logan Webb responded with an "Amen, brother" gif of Ron Burgundy. So you got Logan Webb, who definitely was like, "Wink, wink. I hear what you say, brother." And that's disparaging at the least, Eric, because if the Giants want to extend Logan Webb in the future, this is going to be a thorn in his side. And this is starting to get into the ripple effect and the repercussions of this, not only with current Giants, but future free agents. I mean, look at it this way. Carlos Correa has verbal agreement, has known for 6 or 7 days, changes his Twitter header. There's this Instagram post of him hugging his family. They're celebrating the deal. He followed like all the current Giants. He just like followed them all on Instagram and Twitter. Like he was super excited to go. There's no doubt that he was happy to be here.
He was into it.
He was totally into it. And of course, Crawford was told after the verbal agreement. He wasn't asked prior. He was asked after or told after, hey, by the way, you're going to need to move to third. And
another great move by the front office there.
Another great move. Yeah, dropping that ball, doing it after the fact. That's like, it's like proposing to a girl and then asking her dad after the fact. It's like, do I have permission to marry your daughter?
Crawford's Mr. Giant. How do you just kind of screw him around like that either? That kind of, sticks in my giblets. It's like, what are you doing to Brandon Crawford? This guy would do anything for the Giants. So maybe loop him in on the conversation instead of saying after the fact, this is what we're doing. Like you said, don't do it after the fact. Include him in it. I mean, Crawford is the most captain, whatever, we're ever going to have. He's Mr. Giant. So at least include them, but no, like you said, and they talked to him after the fact. But
it was a little salt in the wound, of course, because look, Correa's good buddy, Puerto Rican fellow Francisco Lindor is, of course, the Mets, multi-million-dollar shortstop. So I guess you can understand why he's not moving or why he is moving to third base. It's like very much like an A-Rod move when he joined the Yankees, and of course, Jeter was at shortstop. But it is it's like, he was big enough here in San Francisco to take over a position from Mr. Giant, but he goes to the Mets and he's like, "Yeah, I'll move to third," because it's my money over here. It was just really weird. It's just really, not that I expected him to switch positions in that situation, because Lindor's on the team for more than this year, but it just was weird. It's like, it's another slap in the face to Brandon Crawford, and he's the guy who can take it, and he's the one who will move past these grudges. But it's going to affect a lot of future free agents. And I wanted to read something here. A second by Andrew Baggerly, because he's got a lot of good questions that he wants to ask the Giants brass. But here's an example of a long-tenured, media personality who has been covering the Giants and Bay Area sports for, 40 years or whatever. Marty Lurie, and we've talked to him at times. He has his post-game show. And he, again, is one of those rational, calm, Giants fans slash, color commenters, right? He's just like, hey, so yeah, and I don't think, and this and that. But this is what his feeling is on this whole issue. He said, quote, and he was on the Pop on Lunch show on KMBR yesterday. He said, rookie mistakes. This is their first time in the deep end of the pool, and things got away from them. The biggest mistake was scheduling the press conference and making this a public issue instead of something that should have been a private issue. And then we wouldn't have this 24 hours of disappointment and everything else. They wanted Correa all along. He was their guy. They targeted him. So to say they didn't have his medical records and they didn't know all of this kind of stuff, I don't believe it at all. He was a free agent last year. His records are available. They are his records. All you have to do is say, look, before we make this deal for $350 million, we want to see all the medical records. And if they do that, then again, it's a rookie mistake. Or if they didn't do that, then again, it's a rookie mistake. And they didn't do their due diligence in looking at his background. And then he goes on further. We didn't know what the Giants saw or didn't see. And it's amazing to me that this is not leaked out somewhere. Boras is talking, giving his twist on everything. But we don't know anything at all from the Giants. To me, silence is deafening on that one. The point is, who approves the press conference? Baseball operations? Matt Chisholm, who's our friend who we deal with all the time. Matt Chisholm is not calling the press conference on his own. Baseball operations has got to say, okay, this is what's going down, and we're doing this tomorrow. And it goes on and on and on. But he basically concludes with, yeah, there's something else going on. It's not the medical stuff. And if it is the medical stuff, then they're rookies, and they drop the ball, and they handle it so poorly. So,
but there's no way they could have, though. This is Farhan Zaidi. The guy was the GM of the Dodgers. You know what I mean? He's the president
had
of the
his
Giants.
Medicals. Yeah.
He's not a rookie at doing this crap.
No.
You know what I mean? That's the thing. The Giants ownership has been around for years. They're not rookies at doing this. And that's what Marty's saying is these guys are not rookies at doing this, yet they acted like a bunch of clowns with the way this was handled. It's so bad reflectively. It's so bad. There's no way to. I love that Marty doubted the injury aspect as well, because I mean, he's right. All this information's been out there. Everything's been out there. And rational want to say that's fine, but leak something somewhere, get it to one of your known, writers. If Susan Slusser suddenly came out with some information, nobody would bat an eye. We'd be like, okay, thank you. I'm glad we got some information about it. But the silence is deafening. Sometimes silence is the answer to a question. And that is what the Giants are giving us. Every single question we have, they're giving us silence. And that's enough of an answer for us to say, all right, fine. You don't care. We'll draw our own conclusions, because that's how it feels as a fan, like that they don't care. They just don't care what we think, what we feel about it. They're going to make the same money this year that they would have made. With their payroll 20-something million less, almost 30 million less than it was with Correa. Well, great. Then they, don't have to make that 30 million throughout the year. So they're still going to turn the same kind of profit, and that's not what I want for my baseball team. I want my owners to want to win. I want the people in charge to want to win.
Andrew Baggerly, who's been, I guess, taking a Twitter break, but he's still, of course, writes for The Athletic, and he has some great quotes in here prior to the 20 questions, which we'll read some of them here, but from his, here's some excerpts from his article. But a minimal response still counts as a response. Silence counts as a response. Not acknowledging questions is a response to those questions. It usually means you have no good answers. Chairman Greg Johnson, CEO Larry Baer, and Zaidi have public-facing jobs. Eventually, they will face the public again. Until then, they're leaving us with little more than unconfirmed details, conjecture, rumor, innuendo, and the fertility of imaginations unencumbered by facts in evidence. I love that last line. He's basically saying, yeah, everyone's going to fly off the handle, and we're going to make all of these stories up and conjecture, which may or may not be very accurate, but it's going to lead to that disinformation and lead to more distrust with the Giants, even if it's not fully accurate, and even if it's going over the edge. That's the problem. That's why the Giants need to get in front of it. He also goes on, I could print 15,000 words on the things I heard circulating through various conversations and threads on Wednesday. I'm not sure if I've ever sent or received as many texts in one day in my life, but too many of the central actors have yet to offer even the flimsiest of excuses or explanations. This is not the time to weave together the full narrative of the greatest contract negotiation implosion in Major League history. Again, not hyperbole from us, right?
Nope.
Too much thread is still unaccounted for. So until then, we're left with questions. Here are 20 of mine in no particular order. And so some of these are really good and poignant. First, and again, no particular order, How could the Giants' medical issues be significant enough to scuttle a $300 million deal when the Mets were all too eager to make one of their own? And when the Twins, who are as familiar with Correa's recent health history as anyone, were falling over themselves to re-sign him to a 10-year contract? Yeah, again, like, what are the Giants going to say about that? Well, I guess just we're more conservative about it. Yeah, you're more risk-averse. Apparently. Whether it be the medical history or whether it be someone having cold feet, you're risk-averse to this contract, period.
They're money risk-averse is what it seems like. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Why was the press conference announced in an email sent at 8:35 a.m. Monday before the physical could be completed? That was interesting. What were the extent of efforts, if any, to renegotiate the contract? And if they were minimal, then why? At what point did the Giants release Boras to open negotiations with the Mets? Well, apparently they ghosted him, according to Boras. But again, the Giants haven't come out and said, no, we did call him. And we did say we're passing. There's been no, evidence about that.
The only way we'll feel if there's some wrongdoing on Boras's part there is if the Giants file some sort of grievance. And I have to wonder if Boras and Correa file some sort of grievance as well, because in essence, the Giants cost Boras's client $35 million.
Yep. And some people have pointed to that fact that Boras could be a complete dick and do that and file a grievance. He may or may not win, but at least publicly, it's another embarrassment. And he may do that to the Giants. He might want to embarrass them even further. They're already embarrassed enough. But could you imagine if Boras is like, hey, we had an agreement to $350 million. Now I only got $315 for my client. The Giants cost me $315 million, or my client $35 million. So that'll be interesting. We'll see if that develops. Do the Giants take issue with the timeline and characterization that Boras has provided in his public comments? Again, nothing. Did the findings in Correa's physical complicate or raise potential insurance premiums associated with the contract? And if so, was that a factor in the deal falling apart? Well, the other teams have those insurance premiums too. It would affect them in the same exact way. And they, again, had no problem with that. So why? Why are the Giants being so risk-averse and money risk-averse?
I'm so glad the Twins offered Correa a deal at one point, because if we were just using the Mets as the example, it wouldn't fly as well because of Steve Cohen and the fact that they now...
He'll sign anyone.
Right. But the fact that the Twins felt this way, it helped validate more to us as Giants fans that the Giants dropped the ball on this.
Yeah, why weren't sufficient concerns raised in the Giants' initial medical review, which is part of their standard workup of free agents prior to the start of the signing period, which is what I talked about earlier. They have access to all his medical records. So the ankle injury was there, period. It was there. Did the Giants sense any hesitation from Correa? And this does get a little interesting because according to Boras, Correa was elated to be a Met. Elated to be a Met. In fact, he said he was tackled on his bed when he told Correa of the news, because they were staying on the same floor just a few doors down. So he was negotiating with Cohen. It happened. He told Correa. Correa literally tackled him and bear hugged him onto the bed. So, I mean, what he's asking here is there any sense of any hesitation from Correa, especially after the Mets made their late play and offered a chance to star in a bigger market alongside friend and fellow Puerto Rican Lindor? If so, did the Giants feel any of their own hesitations to commit a 13-year contract to someone who might not have their heart fully in the deal? And I will say, I think this is possible. I do think that, look, if the Mets came in too late and they had already verbally agreed, maybe Lindor was like, Correa was like, oh crap, I could have had a chance to play in New York with Lindor. Well, okay, I'm still happy with the Giants. I'm getting my payday. So maybe when this deal fell apart, maybe the Giants kind of knew this, and maybe it gave him a little bit more incentive and reason to go, he really wants to play in New York, guys. He doesn't really, he will play here, but do we want to deal with a guy who doesn't have 100% of his heart in this team?
Well, I've wondered that, because I wonder if Lindor got in his ear the moment that the news broke about him signing with the Giants. Like, yo, bro, I thought you were going to come hang with us. I thought you were coming this way. And Correa might have been like, no, man, your owner, has already done this, this, and this. I don't think you guys would want me, and then maybe Lindor somehow facilitated, sticking in his ear. But that also doesn't explain away the fact, though, that the Giants have a number one Carlos Correa jersey sitting there on a dais ready for a press conference. That doesn't change the fact that he was literally in the ballpark also reportedly excited about the prospect of becoming a Giant and being the face of an organization. So, it's hard to weigh one against the other and know which one really is the true.
Yeah.
I think Lindor, not Lindor. I think Correa's reaction with Boras is probably based more on the fact that he gets to play with Lindor and he avoided a shit show in San Francisco. I think that's where that comes
and that
from.
had happened so quickly. And he got most of the money that he'd want. And
I don't think that means that that's what he wanted all along.
No.
I think once all this crap started happening with the Giants, he might have already been checked out with the Giants and been like, okay, fine. If that's how they want to deal with this, fine, screw them, I'm done. And so when the Mets deal came through, that's why he was so excited. And I can't blame him. I mean, he gets to go play with a buddy of his for a star-studded team. I mean, with $111 million tax bill. That's not even their payroll. It's the tax bill that they have to put on their payroll. And so, I mean, it's kind of amazing to work for Steve Cohen in that respect. You would jump at a chance. Anybody would jump at that chance as a baseball player. Oh, yeah. So I don't think that it got in the way of the negotiations in the sense that, maybe his heart's not totally into it. I think his heart was. You know what I mean? I think all the other signs point to, yeah, he was totally in on this. And then the moment he found out the Giants were just absolutely a clown show behind the scenes for some reason, he's like, oh, okay, I'm glad I avoided the circus.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably what happened. And if the Giants had any wind or information about him not having his heart fully into it, again, why is that decision and realization being made at the 11th hour? Why wasn't it made 2 days prior? I mean, come on. The owners are going to be intimately aware of all this stuff. It's not going to be like that morning. They're like, hey, I don't know if Correa's into this. Really? Let's talk about it. Yeah. Oh, okay, screw him. Like, I just don't think that was likely. But
he was excited to wear. Correa was excited to wear Giants orange, and lucky for him, he gets to in New York.
He does get to wear Giants orange. That's right. That's part of the Mets color scheme. He had changed his Twitter header to Oracle Park. He had followed all the Giants players on social media. So he definitely had all the showings of someone who was interested in wanting to play here. So, why didn't the Giants approach the offseason with the decisiveness of, say, Philadelphia's Dave Dombrowski, who is known to move aggressively, signing Trey Turner before the winter meetings began? To what extent could their current predicament, arguably the most disappointing offseason by a team in Major League history? Oh my God, there's Andrew Bagley saying, like, any team, any offseason in Major League history, this is probably the most disappointing. How could it have been avoidable? Do the events of the last 48 hours reinforce or lend credence to the criticism that the Giants are too cautious, too conservative, too risk-averse? Yeah, I think that's the main one right there.
Yeah, I mean, they don't close the deal for some reason, whether or not it's them getting gun-shy or what it is. And you look at, like, Philadelphia is a great example. Why weren't the Giants out aggressive in front? And it makes you wonder if it just goes back to front office and ownership clashing with ideas of which direction they want to go. What did I scream about all season long? What direction is this team going? I don't see a direction for this ball club. I don't understand the direction for this ball club. Direction. And finally, we had one.
You were so happy last week. You're like, it's a direction. They're doing it.
They had one for 6 days. 6 days, he was a Giant. 6 days between our podcasts. It's really funny. They had a direction, and now they don't. And you have to wonder if that is the problem. They really don't have a direction because there's so much infighting. There might be a ton of infighting we don't know about. One person has one idea about what they want to do, and the other side has another idea what they want to do. That's where those questions that Bags is asking come into play. How come these other teams have no problem stepping up? How come the Phillies did jump in on their guy Turner? Like, if Correa was the Giants guy all along and it wasn't Judge, why do the Judge act? Why not just go for Correa in the first place? So many more questions.
They also it's a very large paragraph here, but he brings up the point of, Anthony DeSclafani getting 3 years, but having the ankle injury that existed prior to it. And now they had a whole year of a $36 million contract wiped out. How about Evan Longoria's finger injury from 2021, and he waited till the following spring to have it surgically repaired, and so he was out for a lot of it? Or how about the obfuscation of Tommy La Stella, who we thought was recovering from one Achilles surgery? It was slipped that he actually had 2 Achilles surgeries. And it was like, why are the Giants hiding this information? And does this lead credence to them being gun shy for players with pre-existing injuries because they have had to eat some of these contracts in recent years. Granted, not as big as Correa, but maybe that was what they're concerned about. They're like, look, we lost, basically almost entire Tommy La Stella contract so far, a full year of Discos, a good portion of Longoria's. That's a lot of money that we've left on the table, And so now they're looking at Carlos Correa going 350. If he's injured in year 4, boy, that's a lot of years left to pay. I think everybody could recognize that out of 13 years, if it's the back 3 or 4 years in which he's not playing much, that's just the cost of doing business. But maybe the Giants ownership was more concerned about the middle part of the contract and how they would lose like maybe more than even 50% of the value of the contract due to injury based on the leg injury or whatever else it may have been. But again, that leads to the cold feet. That leads to the buyer's remorse. It's still the same thing. It's still the same thing. Why go in this deep and then pull out?
Giants have shitty doctors, maybe. I don't know. Because, you listed. I seriously, is that something to consider? Because the Disco deal, should that have happened? The La Stella deal, honestly, should that have happened? And the Longoria finger thing, I totally forgot about until it was brought up. And I was like, yeah, that's just another one of those. Brandon Belt's another great example of a guy who's deemed healthy and good to play. And then he goes out, and 3 days later, he's back on the IL again.
Now we know he has no cartilage in his knee or whatever. So it's like that's not
right. Well, why didn't they notice that 2 years ago? Why weren't things at that point put into place to deal with those things? I'm not saying the Giants doctors are shitty, but maybe it's time to consider that they need to look at what their medical staff is doing, unless their medical staff is doing exactly what they want them to do, which is kind of what your point is.
He goes on with some other good questions that we've kind of touched on. How will the Giants salvage an apparently unsalvageable offseason now by pivoting to the trade market? They're not going to trade anyone right now. And if they did, it would smell of desperation, which ties into, will other teams smell desperation oozing from their sweat glands? You want Brian Reynolds? We want all of your minor leaguers. Things like that, where it's like, don't do that. Don't do that, Giants. Don't overreact. Don't think that that's going to solve this or assuage the Giants fans. That's not going to happen. We need players, but don't sell the farm for one guy, right? That kind of stuff. What will their future negotiations with Boras look like, or any agent for that matter? Is it possible that Boras has them exactly where he wants them, knowing his skill for leveraging desperation at the ownership level? Is this all setting up for the Giants to bid against themselves and give Juan Soto a 15-year, $600 million contract 2 years from now? Right? And it's true. This could trigger the Giants to overreact and even pay more for a free agent because it's the only way they'll get someone, right?
Maybe. Who knows? The one time they showed us they were willing to do that, the deal fell apart at the last second.
So we have nothing to go on except this one deal.
Right.
How do you tell Crawford now, especially after Correa agreed to play third base for the Mets, something the Giants didn't seem to have the courtesy to ask of him? It's true. What do you tell the rest of your players? How do you expect a young ace like Logan Webb to be motivated to sign an extension when the organization appears so feckless and incapable of bold strokes? It's true.
I was impressed with his wordage there. Yeah,
that's very good. What is preventing the Giants from attracting a major free agent? Where is the fault in their process? Is Kapler an impediment, or are they just too indecisive? Oh my God!
These are all legit questions because there is obviously a flaw in the process somewhere for the Giants. We were talking about it before all this crap happened, and now it's just glaring. Obviously, there is a fault somewhere in the process. What is it? Why can't we attract the big free agents? Why can't the Giants sign those big guys? And I guess the counter argument to that is they did in Carlos Correa, but then they backed out. But maybe that's the reason. Maybe that's the fault. Maybe they were known for that. Maybe, Giants ownership is known around baseball is maybe you don't want to get into bed with these people because they'd be gun shy, and it could just be the perception of what they are at this point because we don't know. We don't know what the problem is. There's a problem somewhere in the Giants organization and we don't know what it is. We just can't. We can't pinpoint it yet.
Yeah, he goes on to say, as much as it might be a PR and marketing nightmare to run another mix and match lineup out there or to skate along or at near 500 and hope to sneak into the last wildcard spot, were the Giants really going to enjoy a sizable bump at the box office by signing Correa? Are they better off to keep pouring resources into the farm system and building toward a year or two from now when the regional economy might be brighter after the pandemic than it appears in the near term? Again, that ties back into what I was referring to as like some sort of market analysis that some of the owners may have gotten. Maybe they realized, Correa isn't going to move the needle as much as we thought in terms of financial impact. So financially, this doesn't make any sense. And now you add his leg injury and other things, and maybe they think he's only going to get half the contract played out. I don't know. So they're doing their risk analysis and their numbers, and they just said, nope, this is a bad deal. We realize it now. Back out, back out, back out. That's all possible and part of that market analysis. I don't agree with it, but it could be a reason why they did it. But again, that it's fine if that's what their numbers state. But the fact that you agreed to it and had them hours from the press conference and then you cancel, that again is the main course of this discussion and why Giants fans are pissed. If they said
the bride
from the get-go,
walked down the aisle and then got to the altar and took off.
Yeah,
that's how it happened. That's how close we were.
That's the whole thing. This is why it's going to have these repercussions. And then, of course, when Aaron Judge, ironically yesterday, I mean, it was like the baseball gods are so mean sometimes, Eric. But here he is being introduced as the captain of the Yankees. And then they're interviewing him. And there are some subtle digs there. When he was also told about the Correa stuff, and he said, quote, "We belong in New York," and described the free agent process as, quote, "a valuable lesson." Did the Giants interpret that as if they never had a legitimate chance? And we talked about it during our Aaron Judge podcast, but all the signs point to he just used the Giants as leverage, from the staging of the video to everything to get the Yankees to up their bid, because he was pissed about them leaking out the contract extension offer in spring training. So,
and you layer all that on this fuck up, it just makes this offseason. That's why Bags, when he says possibly the worst offseason for any franchise in history, you keep saying it. We're not throwing hyperbole out there when we say these things. And it's true. That is what those layers are, what contribute to where we are right now.
Yeah, it's I've never seen anything like it. None of these people have ever seen anything like it. And we just don't know what the fallout's going to be. We can, again, have conjecture about why it happened and who's not going to come as a result, who's not going to re-sign as a result. That's all going to be yet to come. But all I know is that 90% of what we talk about is about the performance on the field and the players and their stats and how they're doing. And the last few have not been like that. It's all been about signings and the hot stove. I definitely have never had a hot stove offseason like this, but I'm telling you right now, we're going to have more podcasts, obviously, before spring training starts. But being gut checked right now, trying to be analytical and just paper focused. I asked you the question last week when we thought we had Carlos Correa: are the Giants better on paper than they were when they won 81 games? And we both said yes. Now I know Carlos Correa is just one player, but when you look at the loss of Rodon, right, and they try to replace him with Mania and Stripling, kind of a two-headed monster with the same contract that they had given Rodon a year ago with 2 years and an opt-out, right? You added Mitch Haniger, and that's about it. You lost some bullpen guys. You lost other, on paper right now, they're a little worse, I think. They're at
75,
best,
76,
they're at best
77.
the same. They're at best the same because they slightly improved their lineup with Haniger, but their rotation got slightly weaker because they lost the stud in Rodon. And it's not to say that Stripling and Manaea couldn't fill in admirably and maybe combine to be like a Rodon, but we don't know that at this point. So on paper, it just looks worse. And the other thing I brought up in the Twitter Spaces yesterday was the fact that during the 6-day window in which the Giants thought that they had Carlos Correa is the same window in which Dansby Swanson signed with the Cubs and Carlos Rodon signed with the Yankees. And I have every right to think and every reason to think that if they had initially passed on Rodon or Correa, or if Correa had signed with another team, the Giants would have pursued and signed at least one of those two guys.
Maybe Rodon. After listening to Dansby's presser in Chicago, though, I think Dansby was signing in Chicago from the get-go. He had family ties with his grandfather and Chicago Cubs baseball that seemed to be very overwhelming. So I have a feeling he might have taken a little less money to play in Chicago than the Giants would have had to get, I think, over $200 million to persuade somebody like Dansby to come out. But you're right, though. The money that they, were using there could have been used in a completely different way. But in that 6-day window, those guys came off the board, and now there's nobody. There's nowhere to pivot.
But if you add up and you're right, they might have had to spend more on Swanson, but in a hypothetical world, if you add up what the Cubs gave Swanson and the Yankees gave Rodon, it added up to just shy of what they were going to give Correa. So, I mean, you look at that and you're like, wow. I mean, I know for fewer years, but still the total value is about the same. So you just kind of go, wow. But the Giants are sitting now at 179 million or whatever. Number
right there.
15.
Greg Johnson called it. He said 180 million or whatever.
And that was another thing. He publicly stated he wanted to be, I should say, between 170 and 180 million. And I think that's a big clue right there that he might have been one of the owners that said, nope, not going to do this anymore, because they are now in that window that he wanted. And this points to that market analysis and how can we be profitable? How can I make the most money possible? We got all these real estate projects coming online. We've paid for the stadium now. I mean, at this point, even though the Mets are becoming the evil empire like the Yankees are, all of New York now, apparently. And New York's just pummeling everything in the Bay Area. The Warriors, the Knicks, and the Nets just pummeled the Warriors by like a combined 60-something points. Sans Steph Curry. It's been really bad. But then they take Aaron Judge back, and now they take Carlos Correa. And it's just like, holy crap, New York is like public enemy number one, or maybe number two behind the Dodgers. The Dodgers had a very quiet off season, and everyone surmises that they're just loading up their financial resources to make a run at Shohei Ohtani next year. And with their stars and their track record and their pedigree of championships or pennants, I should say, Shohei wants to win. He's already been in Southern California. It'd be an easy decision for him to go there. But I wouldn't be surprised if Cohen and others go for him as well. But there's something to respect about a guy who's the richest baseball owner, owns 100% of his team. And he's just like, yeah, get me that one. Get me that guy. And get me that guy. Oh, can I have another martini, please? Thanks. Boom. He doesn't care. He's just like, I want to win a championship. And if I were a Mets fan right now, I'd be through the roof. I know they may not win a World Series. Not all those teams win World Series. But you know what? They're going to have a hell of a fun season, with an all-star team.
I'd be so pumped. I would be so excited. So, that's what the Mets do. The Giants obviously do the opposite. Where do we go from here? Do the Giants do anything else? I think I personally don't want to see them sign anybody else. Don't bother committing any more money. Don't bother.
There's no one out there that's going to move the needle. There's just and going to help the team significantly. It's just not going to happen.
Like Will Myers signed over in Cincinnati today, so that's off the board as a possibility. So let's not even worry about that.
Yeah, there's Michael Conforto.
Right, nobody's going to plug the holes that the Giants need plugged right now. So let's see what some of these young guys can do. Let's let some of the young guys come up during the year and see what they can do. Just let them play. That's where I'm at this point. Just go with what you got right now. See who can play and who can't. You might as well look at the farm system, because everybody, the one argument is, well, the Giants didn't need stars in 10, 12, and 14. Well, yeah, that's because they had like 10 homegrown players who blossomed on their roster. You had the pitchers in Bumgarner, Kane, Wilson, Lincecum. You had the regulars, Panda, Buster Posey. You had so many guys, Joe Panic, that came up, Brandon Crawford, Brandon Bell, who came up through the system. We don't have that right now.
Nope.
That's not happening. Buster Posey is not walking through that door.
No, I keep hearing that argument, and I said, yes, that is, you're absolutely right. They won those championships based on their homegrown system. Who is their analog now? Who's their comp now? They don't have it. So don't say that. That's just this. Yeah, that could, in theory, happen in 3 or 4 or 5 years if these guys actually finally develop. It's not happening this year. Even if you have a breakout rookie campaign from Kyle Harrison, who might be called up in June, right? That's not going to single-handedly win it for the Giants, right? They need a core of players. They need a core of these guys, and they're not all going to pop up this year. So you can't just bring that out as an excuse. Yeah, they're going to develop their farm system as much as they can, but they're behind schedule, Eric, and part of it is the pandemic, but teams like the Dodgers and others just seem to keep churning these guys out, and the Giants, for some reason, the Lucianos and Ramoses and others are just, they're not developing like they were forecast to be developing, what we've been told. And, I don't know where the blame lies there, if it's a psychological thing from the players, if it's a development issue, a scouting issue, or whatever, but we thought these guys would be coming up by now. And it's just not working out. And so it's not that it still can't. We've seen it from, like, say, a Matt Williams way back in the day. That dude started and stopped in the major leagues for like 2 or 3 seasons. He just couldn't get it going. And then finally it clicked for him. So maybe something like that happens. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. It's they need the free agent building now. The team is not horrible. They're mediocre at best right now. They're not
There's
horrible.
just not enough talent, though.
But there's just not enough talent. So you got to do it via free agent. You have to. And we thought they had their guy, and obviously they did not. So they decided to move in another direction. But I'm very curious to see how the Giants, I still can't believe they haven't handled this yet, but I am very curious to see what their answers are going to be, because they have to face the music at some point. They're not going to hide from the media for the entire season. That's not going to happen. So at some point, they got to answer the tough questions. And I can't wait till Bags and Pavs and others face-to-face ask Farhan and Bear and others what the hell happened. And I'm going to be pissed if they just keep pivoting to, well, it's a medical issue, we can't talk about it. Yeah, but you can answer these other questions that don't disclose the nature of the medical issue. You're like, what was the concern? Was it because you thought he would be injured in 3 years? Like, tell us that. Like, you can do that. That's not revealing a medical condition. So it'll be interesting to see what they say. But before we close out, I did wanted to, it was very, very funny. I was listening to KNBR yesterday, and Steve Young, of course, quarterback for the 49ers, he does a lot of analysis for ESPN and others, has a weekly show with Tolbert and Copes in the afternoon. And so he was on yesterday. And at the very end of the interview, they said, hey, what were your thoughts on Correa? So I just want to play this for you because it is fantastic. Okay, here we go.
Absolutely. Oh, by the way, what do you think of Carlos Correa?
Why not? I mean, there's a couple of names that I was hoping for, but okay.
Oh, no.
Because we have to me, when we bring in the big names.
No. He's not here, Steve.
Steve,
you didn't hear the news.
Man.
He signed with the Mets.
What? What?
Bro, he backed out of the
Steve,
deal.
this is a nightmare.
To Green Bay and back. You're telling me in the time that I was going to Green Bay and back in the 2 days,
Yes.
we lost him?
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
they called the press conference off yesterday morning. It was supposed to be at 11. He was supposed to come on KNBR at 8:30 a.m. They canceled the press conference, and they postpone it, and we find out more as the afternoon goes on. But not until last night about 11 p.m., news breaks, Carlos Correa is signing a 12-year deal worth $315 million with the New York Mets. We wake up this morning, that's all official. He is not a Giant, and the Giants have made virtually no comment on the matter at all, except that they wish him well.
Christ. Two things. One, clearly I've been deep into Christmas because you guys are breaking news that broke 3 years ago, so that's great. I really look smart on that one. And the second thing is, what the hell? No, we don't roll that way. You don't reject us like that. That's not how we roll. We land guys like you. You don't head fake us.
No, we don't, Steve.
Apparently, we rejected him.
Even better, Steve. Even better.
Whew.
Bad medicals.
I got to process.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk to you next year, Steve. We'll do it after the new year, man.
We'll process this next year, boys.
Yes, very good.
You're going to ruin my Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Steve.
Love McCall.
There you go.
Oh, dude. That was
amazing. What?
The Niners know that winning and teamwork
Kill
go.
that. There we go. Oh my God.
What?
I'm sorry. What? And then you hear Copes in the background. Oh no, he doesn't know. Oh, that was so funny to hear his reaction. Yeah,
I hadn't heard the extended of that. That's hysterical.
He had been traveling, so he didn't hear about it. But
He tried to spin it positively. He's like, "No, you don't reject us. Guess what, Steve? They all reject us. Nobody wants to play for the fucking Giants unless they grew up in the Bay
No,
Area."
Steve, he didn't reject us. They rejected him. And he's like, "What?
And then another what?
What?" Anyway,
Yeah, that sums it up, Steve Young. That's how we all feel about it.
That sums it up. So, I mean,
fuck?
like, look, even a guy who's a passive Giants fan and an ex-quarterback for the Niners was, like, pissed about it. I mean, come on. This is, like... Anyway, the Giants are going to have a lot of damage control here in the coming weeks and months, and this is going to be a wound that's going to take a long time to heal in the hearts of all Giants fans, you and me included. And I know there are people jumping off bridges, not literally, but saying, "That's it, I'm not a Giants fan." Oh, stop it. Come on. You can't be a fan for 20, 30, 40 years, your whole life, and then you bail because owners bailed on one guy. But I am frustrated as a fan. I'm frustrated because I was really looking forward to having Correa on the team. And more importantly, I'm really worried about the long-term implications. And if this is going to send the franchise into a little bit of a tailspin, to many years of mediocrity, because it's going to suppress their ability to sign the big free agents and to extend players that they do develop, like a Logan Webb, or in the future, 5 years down the road, a Kyle Harrison wants an extension because he's been pitching well. Who knows, right? It's long-term effects, Eric, and we're going to be talking to you. This is weird. This is one of those touchstone moments, right? This is like Russ Ortiz being handed the ball. This is like, Hunter Pence's triple double. This is like, Solomon Torres starting, game 162 against the Dodgers. I mean, this is up there in Giants lore as one of their most heartbreaking moments, and it sucks. It sucks, and I hope the owners realize it. I hope the people who made this decision realize what they've done, and I hope that they're held accountable for it. But again, you can't fire owners, so there's nothing we can do about that, And
so accountability may be elusive in this instance.
Yeah, they could absolutely. Farhan is their employee, and they may just tell him, "Fall on the sword, do whatever you can, say whatever you can, do not implicate us. Period. Protect us." I don't know. Even though it really doesn't matter in the long run, they could be hated by the fans, and it won't affect their ability to run the team. But they may want to see Farhan be the fall guy. Then they fire him or he leaves, and then they go, "Oh, we got a new guy to take care of everything." But in reality, I think a lot of fans and journalists are not. They're not that dumb, guys. If you don't provide an explanation other than the medicals, we see what's happening. But
that's where the anger comes in. It's just we all see the long-term ripple effects. We all see what is ahead, and it's dark days. I think it's dark days, Chad. I think we've done this podcast for a long time, and we had some dark days from 2017 to 2019. Those were some really just tough teams to watch.
Yep.
But it was dark in a different way. It was just that everything had been. They shot their load already.
Yeah,
this way
post championship. Yeah, post 2016, and they had the lull. It all happens to all teams.
It does, but that's not what this is. This is going to be mediocrity. We're going to be watching a team that's stuck around 81 wins for the next 5 years if this is the way they're going to operate. And I'm not looking forward to it. I'm not, but I'll be a Giants fan because that's what being a Giants fan is, because we get disappointed and kicked in the nuts over and over and over again, and we come back. My wife, who's a Cubs fan, was asking me some questions, and I was just like, this is just what it's like to be a Giants fan. This is our kind of disappointment, is just always constantly being let down in certain ways. I said, as a Cubs fan, it was different for you guys in the way you're let down. I'm like, this is what it's like for our fan base. It just falls right in the line with all the disappointments and all the gut punches we've ever had. Because the Giants are not going to rebuild fully. They've never torn it down to the studs. Look at their whole existence. They've stunk some years, but they've never, intentionally been like, okay, we're going to completely play the kids. No, they just kind of coast along. And that's why I think we're stuck in mediocrity for the next few years. So I hope people stick with us through the dark days, because we're definitely going to have our fun still with the Giants.
Yeah, I'm just going to play one more clip. This is Mike Krukow being joined this morning. This was his first public appearance with his normal daily or every other day show on KMBR. And I'm just going to play a very small portion of it. But here's Mike Krukow's initial response.
Did you know that flooding can still happen
Never mind. We won't do that right now live. But basically what he said was, first of all, he wanted to know if the local dispensary was open. That was his first reaction. So that was fantastic. That's the clip I thought I had queued up, but I guess not. Yeah. So, but he went on to say that, he was really upset and devastated by this. But, in the end, he did put a spin on it and say, look, we got to move forward. We just have to move forward. I know y'all hurting out there. We have to move forward. The Giants have to move forward. So he was critical, but not as critical. Dwayne Kuiper, same thing. He said, look, it's the Giants' decision. It's their team. They just do what they want. I'm upset about it. I don't understand. So they were critical in a very good politically correct way. They were not flying
because they work for the team.
Exactly.
I mean,
they work for the team.
They're on the team-owned radio station. Like,
yeah.
you know, that's the thing is they're going to be spinning it. And that's why that'll be the place that it gets spun the most positive and stuff like that. I get it. I mean, they're trying to be good soldiers, but this is a rough look. This is a real rough look.
Dave Fleming has more of an ability to be critical, and I am curious for his first interview if he's going to be critical at all, because he tends to be a little bit more like, yeah, this doesn't make sense. You know, something's happening here, but remains to be seen. And then John Miller, he just will spin off into a story about something else, about mac and cheese or something.
I just want to watch baseball. Let's just talk about baseball.
Yeah, well, they made their decision. And anyway, did I tell you the story of...
One time, Honus Wagner was in my kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. But all right, well, that'll be it for... we went a little long there. We had a little group therapy session. Man... It's
so
going to be a tough time, and I do think now we won't be back until the new year, because there's Christmas is in 3 days, and then the new year, and I don't expect anything major at all to happen. But I said that a week ago, so I could be wrong. Who knows? Maybe Derek Jeter will come out of retirement and sign with the Giants. Anyway, point being, we'll be back in the new year at some point, and we'll start prepping everyone for the 2023 season, and there's still some bright things to look forward to. A little bit of hope there, but we'll talk about playoff possibilities and all that down the road. Right now, it doesn't look so good behind teams like the Padres and the Dodgers in the West, and of course overall the Phillies. And
there's still like 7 teams ahead of them. You know what I mean? They didn't improve enough to catch any of those teams.
Buster Olney came on yesterday morning and he criticized the deal. He definitely thinks that there's some cold feet going on from the national perspective. And he said, look, on paper, I'm sorry, but this team is I predict 4th place, even behind the Arizona Diamondbacks, who are looking much, much better with their young core. But he's like, obviously they're behind the Dodgers and the Padres. He's like, but yeah, with Correa, I think it puts them in 3rd, but no, they're a 4th place team right now. And I don't find fault in that logic. I really don't. And, as a Giants fan, it's depressing. They finished 3rd last year, but they also were tied with Arizona with like a month to go. So that is reasonable. That's not out of left field, and Arizona stands to be better this year. So I think it's a real possibility. But anyway, I know that you've been super active with Giants Chatter. You have that article about the Correa debacle. We both joined Twitter Spaces yesterday with the Giants Chatter folks, and that was really good. But you want to say anything about that?
No, Giants Chatter on Facebook. We're now at over 1,100 members.
That's
we
great.
Passed 1,000. Just a couple weeks ago, and now we're ready to shot past 1,100. There'll be still live streams and stuff like that, but with the there's no coffee in the cove until after the year, New Year. So I'm not doing anything there. So just head over there. It's all Correa right now, and that's all it's going to be for a little bit, just because not much is going to happen. So there's going to be a lull in the Giants off season, I think, coming up right now. So.
Yeah,
while we're all left to speculate, come speculate together. And if you want something that's better than just Kruk and Kite Group, and I'll call it by name, come over to Giants Chatter. We try to have a pretty civil discussion. There was 100 and something comments on my article yesterday, and generally people were pretty good in the comments. So you can definitely just get good discussion there. So Giants Chatter, all that stuff.
Yeah, shout out to Mike Dowling and Nick Vesmar and others who joined the live stream today. We do appreciate your support. You can always go back to Facebook to check out our video streams. If you don't want to look at our ugly mugs, of course, you can find our podcast wherever you find your podcast. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, since that's still running right now, as far as we know. And then, of course, we post everything on torturecast.com. So until episode 272, this is 271. We're going to wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays once again, and a Happy New Year. We probably won't talk to you till after then. And just stay calm, move along, and we'll see what happens in the new year. But until then, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Boom.
Happy Hanukkah.
A big thank you to everybody for listening to the Torture Cast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. Follow us on Twitter at TortureCast. You can also like us on Facebook or check out our blog at torturecast.com. I also want to say thank you to Ashcon and Bailey for letting us use their song Feeling Like a Giant for our intro. For Ben Lee and Chad King, my name is Willie Dills saying, we'll see you next time.